Candy Leader Insights, the podcast where we dive into the world of customer success with industry leaders. I'm your host, Irina Chismash, and today I'm joined by Ryan Miller, Head of Customer Success at Cogniss, a platform that helps entrepreneurs, researchers, and healthcare professionals build digital health apps without writing code, a single line of code. And I'm thrilled to have you here. Thanks for joining.
No, thanks so much. It's really a pleasure and an honor to be here. So, no, I really appreciate the invitation.
Let's go back to the roots for a second. You started in business strategy, moved into no code, low code, and now you run customer success at Cogniss. That's quite a mix. What got you here and why customer success?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. My career sort of journey has never been very traditional or linear in that sense. It looks like on paper that there's a lot of jumps, tangents, and things like that. Really, my career started in business strategy, frankly, because that's where I could get a job at the time. And I started at a very introductory sort of role, basically doing admin. I was able to automate a lot of my day-to-day like administrative tasks to give myself a bit more capacity. And I knew admin wasn't where I wanted to stay. I was really interested in business strategy, solving problems, complex problems, finding simple solutions for things is really something that excites me. And so business strategy really, yeah, in general was where I wanted to get to. The agency I was working at thankfully gave me that opportunity. And it was really, looking back, a fantastic place to start my career. I got to work within so many different types of industries here in Australia and Sydney and all around the world in some ways, a range of different companies from startups all the way through to large enterprise corporations as well, and develop a lot of like really transferable skills too. So knowing how to think, how to solve problems, how to affect change within an organization are really big skills of those. And those are things that I brought into a lot of my other roles. So after my time at that company finished up, I did a little bit of consulting on my own, decided that being my own boss wasn't necessarily for me. The whole new business side of things, constantly bringing stuff in as you're completing projects, it's a lot to carry. And so the opportunity came to be one of the first hires at a no code agency. And I was like, look, you can't write a line of code. So no code sounds interesting, and jumped in. And at first, there was probably about 6 months where I was literally one of the developers on the tools, learning how to build products. And this was my introduction into tech. And while it was no code, it taught me a lot of the fundamental principles of how to build a good product. And I got to be a part of a lot of different sort of builds, from two-way sort of marketplaces through to CRM and internal systems, through to even digital health apps themselves. And so again, got a lot of experience really quickly in doing that. But my background and my skills were very much more in account management. And so I stepped into a relationship management and operations role there, helping run, that sort of side of the business. But after working in an agency, doing my own sort of consulting, and then again, working in another agency, I was ready to step into much more of the customer side. And so when there was an opportunity at Cogniss, it felt like the right fit. And being an early stage startup, they weren't necessarily looking for someone who had 10 years plus of specific customer success experience, but someone who was adaptable, who, was excited to build something. And thankfully I fit the bill. So that's how I ended up there.
I think you were the perfect, as I understand, you were the first hire for the team when you joined. And I think everything that you told us up until now helped you take that particular job because you had the business experience. Even if it was for a short period of time, you were also an entrepreneur. And basically, this helps you understand the challenges of running basically a business. You work on the account management, on the product side. So all of those elements connected, I'm sure that it made you a better customer success person without actually knowing that this is what you will step into. And speaking about Cogniss, give us a quick snapshot of how does customer success look like? The team setup, what does your day-to-day look like? Are you the only CS person or you extended the team? Tell us more about the current role.
Yeah. No, absolutely. So when I started, I was like CS hire kind of 1.5. They had brought in somebody very junior for a short amount of time who started to get some of the foundations in place, but later left and I came in and yeah, without having any sort of formal customer success experience, I was learning on the job, but then also applying a lot of those principles that I carried into the role to do it as well. Looking back, I'd probably do a lot of things differently. But for me, it was always about getting good results for customers. And the function overall has changed a lot. And the team, thankfully, has grown too. So it was just me for the first sort of year. And yeah, that was a big role. It's still a big role, but you're managing a book of business. You're trying to build out a function as well. The two kind of very much compete for time. And so, yeah, as soon as we were able to bring another team member in, which was another sort of junior CSM here in Sydney, that's when things started really shifting for us, which was great. We then got to lead the launch of the company over into the UK as well. So being one of the team members to do that was fantastic. And we've now hired over the UK a senior CSM who brings a wealth of experience to the team, which I've found really balances me out as well, looking at more what's some out of the box ways of doing things versus more traditional ways of doing things. And it's yin and yang in that way. And have really brought a good amount of balance there. But yeah, the day to day, we still all manage a book of business and the CS function in Cogniss. Like we pride ourselves with being able to do a lot with a little. We're Cogniss in general. We're a small team. We have kind of 25 people and thankfully growing. But CS and Cogniss, yes, looks like traditional customer success, but it also looks like customer support and customer onboarding as well. And so that we all carry that plus then trying to drive and scale the customer success function in the business. So any day can look like putting out fires to doing sort of success planning with customers, looking ahead in the future to then more traditional sort of just reporting to then also helping customers learn the platform and looking for efficiencies and how we can do that. So look, no days completely similar, but I think that's one of the reasons why I love it.
For sure. I'm curious, how do you manage the time zone difference between, and how did you manage to build a multicultural team across the globe? How do you do that?
Yeah. Look, I think there's seasons in everyone's career, right? Where you need to commit yourself to building something. And sometimes that can come with the sacrifice of what you would look at as work-life balance. But I think on the other side, like you need to see that the goal is that you have then built and accomplished something that you can take a break and look back on and be really excited at what was there. And that's definitely been seasons being in an early stage startup. I think that's startup life and anyone who works in a startup would be able to identify with that. But yeah, it's multiple time zones. You end up working into the night some, but thankfully Cogniss is a company that recognizes that. So there's always a give and take in different ways. And in terms of flexibility, before we built a team over in the UK, I was managing a book of business over there. So that was 3 or 4 nights a week, which was, yeah, it was taxing, but at the same time, you learn so much and you learn about how different sorts of, albeit similar, like cultures work and things like that, which is quite cool. But now it's a very much more manageable. Our senior CSM, takes over all of the sort of Europe, UK sort of region, even some of the Americas, which is great. And so really my time in the evenings is catching up with him and planning and looking forward. So yeah, it's much different now, but yeah, it was a grind to get here, which was good.
Speaking about the recognition and being proud of the things that you've managed, wanna ask you, what are the key outcomes or metrics you try to understand whether your customers are successful? What's important to you guys?
Yeah. Look, to be honest, when I started, this was one of the things we didn't necessarily have in place. And I think probably to give you an answer on this, you need to understand a little bit about the different types of customers that we work with. So you got it spot on earlier, like entrepreneurs, researchers, clinicians, but each one of those sorts of customer types operates extremely differently. Researchers typically are awarded a grant. That's a finite amount of money that they have to spend. And they usually just have one sort of goal to accomplish where, as you can imagine, entrepreneurs, clinicians, they're more sort of your traditional customer types where it's an account that you're looking to renew and grow over time. So metrics for both of these really differ. And when we started, we didn't really have a set of metrics. And yeah, essentially the system was, what's the gut feeling on this account?
Mhm.
And the dangerous part about systems is they work until they don't. So it wasn't until we really lost two key customers in the same year that we realized we really needed to shift the way that we measure success with customers. And look, these are hard lessons to learn. They're good lessons to learn. Looking back, you're like, that was really obvious. Why weren't we doing that beforehand? But like I said, when you're managing a lot, sometimes things like this slip through the cracks. So we started a little left of field. Like, I feel like the metrics you always hear talked about, we hear about churn and our ARR, like year-on-year growth, et cetera, NPS even. But for us, because we had these different customer types, it actually came down to just getting formal success plans in place per account and actually looking at what does our customers define as success. And we really very much aligned ourselves with those metrics. And the results were almost immediate. We had an account that was at risk, and this was while we were implementing these processes. And within a couple of months, that the whole sort of narrative with that customer change, which was fantastic. And they've now renewed, and it's been a really good sort of shift for the business overall. And something our customers really actually look forward to, because it becomes a living agenda for every single touch point with that customer, where we're looking at, hey, how are we tracking in these areas? This is what we're doing, the value that we're providing. This is how it's affecting your business, your research, whatever that is. And it becomes a really tangible way for us to, work with our customers, see outcomes that they're achieving, but then also be able to tie that back to, ROI within the business.
That's super interesting. And I love that you shared two of the, I wouldn't call it mistakes, two of the things that you would have wanted it to do it differently, because usually those are the best lessons. And those are the things that, okay, they stuck to you. And it's okay, this is why I should have done it differently. And the impact of those, it's important. And speaking of the things that you would want to do it differently, I have a question end of the conversation. Well, this that we don't have the time to reflect on the things that you would want to do it differently in the next life. But now I want to speak about one of the mental processes in customer success. And I think it's the onboarding, because it's the one that basically defines the journey that you take together with your customer. And I know that you managed to improve the onboarding time by cutting it to half while improving the retention. And I'm curious what actually drove that. What were the ingredients of your successful playbook?
Yeah, like frankly, this is probably something I'm one of my more proudest accomplishments in my almost 4 years there. And it was quite a strategic move, I think, in the CS functions part here. Uh, Cogniss is a no code platform for creating digital health applications. And we really want the customer, the user, to be the creator there. And what we found hard is so many of these people, clinicians, researchers, they're not people that you would necessarily attribute to being a highly technical person or knowing how to create an application, right? And so there's a learning curve to using the platform. There's a learning curve to understand app development and all that kind of goes into it, because there's some fundamentals to app development that you do need to grasp to build a successful app. And it was once we understood, okay, anything that we can do to help flatten that learning curve, to make it easier to learn how to develop on Cogniss, the better, because that will help start to shorten the onboarding process. It will start to shorten the frustrations of creating that app. And we really see our onboarding from the moment the contract is signed with us to when that app is live and being used with users. And for us, it was in the creation of a whole lot of learning resources. One was an academy, so really teaching the fundamentals of Cogniss there. This is how you do simple things to get yourself started. And then secondly was the development of a help site that later became embedded within the platform itself. So a really searchable sort of resource there where people can find answers to their questions. And the way that this sort of impacted retention, obviously you can understand people learning how to use this tool quicker, lets them build their app quicker, more efficiently, more effectively. They can get better results themselves, all like turning into a faster onboarding time, a faster time to value. But the way that it's impacted retention is now they have stepped into the role as like a product owner for their product, and they can take ownership of it. They can manage it. Traditionally, it's always been, they've been working with developers, whether that's a dev team in-house or outsourced to an agency, and they're relying on somebody else to make changes, to make updates. the beauty of Cogniss is we make it really easy to make those changes and updates. So researchers can hold like lived experiences, workshops with people they're trying to affect, and almost sense check different options with them. Entrepreneurs can iterate really quickly over time. Clinicians can basically deploy different sort of interventions at different times to get better results or effects with patients. And it's that sort of skill, knowledge, know-how that has kept people really a part of Cogniss and a part of our ecosystem, because they really then hold the power of being able to manage their own product, which is, yeah, game changing for a lot of these customers.
Now, besides the processes, you also need to, and you also have the team besides the processes, but not only the customer success team, you also have the extended team. And aligning the other teams or your peers, and it's not always the, I would say, easy way. So I'm curious, how do you reach the alignment between product and sales? And how do you make sure that the promises around the customer journey is consistent? How is it in your case? Or not necessarily
Yeah.
in this Cogniss case?
Yeah, I'm in so many ways. So I've found so many of the principles that work in customer success externally also work in customer success internally. And so it's finding the really common ground different ways. In the time that I've been here, we've revisited the entire like sales process, including how CS is involved in pre-sales, like at least 2 to 3 times. We're constantly, I like to think that we actually have a really close relationship with our product team, which is great. They're always leaning on us to understand how customers are interacting with the product. And we're always taking issues, bugs, ideas to them. But it has become a very collaborative way of working. Firstly, it's really establishing the right relationship with the right people. We have a really open culture at Cogniss. We can give each other feedback. We can have hard conversations. Nothing's taken overly personally, because we know at the end of the day, we're all working towards that end goal of growing the company essentially. And so I found the more I can tie things back to actual tangible business value, how this is either going to benefit a customer or how this is going to benefit the business overall, the better those conversations have gone. So it's always looking at the bottom line. How does this affect the business? How does this affect the customer? What value does that add? How many customers will this affect positively? It's those sorts of things that make the conversations, processes affect change so much quicker.
And when it comes to the, do you have a formal or traditional sales team, or is it more product-led motion? And there's no formal sales team to basically do the handover between sales and customer success.
No, we do have a formal sort of, sales team, formal commercial team. So that's, 3 now people that work within that function over in the UK. And then essentially 2 here, and the CEO jumps in and out as he needs. So there is definitely a formal sort of function to it. But yeah, there's handovers are always tricky. And it's something that I think we know is always going to evolve. We try to make it really clear what we need from the sales team to have the best sort of start to that sort of customer journey post sale and the onboarding. And so that's even starting to look at like success metrics and stuff like that at the point of sale, like what matters to that customer, why are they buying, where's their sort of like line in terms of value realization and things like that. And it's things like that sort of take time to implement. They take time to understand. They take time on both sides to understand like why that's important. And then also too, sometimes things just happen quickly, or sales just need to progress quickly and things get left out. And I would never point any fingers. They're trying to do their job. We're trying to do ours, right? And yeah, we try to put as many processes in place as we can, as many sort of documents to capture these sorts of things. But ultimately, sometimes you just have to know what's been captured, what hasn't been. And that's where handovers are really important. So you know what to cover in that sort of kickoff call. So anything that might have been missed, you can uncover and get that quickly. Again, we've learned through experience and good handovers and some poor handovers. But thankfully, in times that handovers haven't gone well, we have a team that really cares deeply about the success of the customer. So people get involved and we understand what we need to do to make that right. And look, that collaborative sort of culture is, I think, what ultimately drives a lot of wins.
What's been one of the toughest challenges when you scaled the CS team? So now I think you are 3 or 4 in the team. So basically, you started as the first or one and a half resource in CS, and now the team has grown. What has been the toughest challenge when you scaled? What was the complicated part in your case?
Yeah, I think the most complex part, besides anything else, like aligning with other teams or anything like that, has always been capacity. Every single one of our CSMs manages their own book of business. They all help out with support. They're all involved in customer onboarding and their customers, and at times even helping out with other ones. And so very much so. And then too, there's the paid services side of the business too, which ultimately sometimes the CSM gets involved with helping in the delivery of that. And yeah, capacity at times in the team can be really tight, but we know, and the team really has a deep understanding that there's just times where we have to really, yeah, put our heads down and put in a bit of extra time in order to help scale that. One of our biggest projects recently, which is on the cusp of going live, is the introduction of an AI agent into the platform to take a lot of the load off in support. And to get that over the line, like we had to turn our existing help resource and update a lot of it into the language model. And that is a massive sort of task. And on top of our current workloads, I think we smashed that out in about 3 months. We're by no means there or finished. There's still a lot more to do, but we've made a lot of progress. And then there's the actual sort of setting up that system and all of that sort of stuff. So the team very much understands that there's times where we have to work a little bit harder to see the fruits of those labors on the other side and hopefully make things easier. But the one thing that we do is we always look at kind of bottlenecks and capacity going forward, especially with where the business is going, potential sales closing, potential sort of even new ways of working, and then take that back to CS and strategically look at how does our function need to evolve to better accommodate like where we're going as a business, what's on the horizon, what deals are coming in, what the customers need. And that's how we've always looked at it and how we've determined when the right time to push is versus when the right time is to just manage the day to day.
And now the moment of reflection. What's something that you would do differently if you were to build the CS function again from scratch?
Yeah, no, that's a good one. I'm very big picture focused naturally. So I like looking at where can we go, what's out there, what's happening. And yeah, I think actually probably what CS needed at the very start was more of a foundation, more of those foundational processes. And if I were to go back, I think that's a lot of what I would put in straight away. Like one of those we covered it earlier. How do we measure success per account? What does that look like? Even getting as granular as getting a detailed map of the customer journey or something like that. But it really would be spending more time getting those sort of processes in place early on.
And what's one piece of advice you would give to someone who is basically stepping into their first head of CS role, regardless of the industry, the product, the go-to-market motion?
Yeah, it really depends on like the stage of the company they're joining. If it's an early stage startup like Cogniss, if they're one of the first sort of CS hires, or maybe there's just a small team doing CS there, I think the piece of advice I would give is not to rush into things or not to think you know better, but really to get a lay of the land straight away. Like that's priority number one. Get in there. Yes, do the job, but really strategically try and look at what's working well, what's not. Talk to the CSMs, talk to customers, understand where the most impact or the lowest hanging fruit is, and then use that to decide where to focus. I think sometimes, and I've been guilty of this, you jump in, you think you know best, you think you know where to apply effort, and you might start building something that's really great, only to find that one of those pieces of the foundation is missing. In my case, it might have been something like success metric, right? But if you didn't take the time to get the lay of the land, you missed that piece. And ultimately what you're building, you either have to pause, it might in worst case fall over, and then create a bad perception around what's going on there. Look, information is always really helpful. I find information in so many ways is, especially for CSMs, is power that lets us know how our account is going, across very different things. But I think really, yeah, take your time, get into a company, understand what's going on, and then where that sort of the best or most impact can be had in applying that sort of effort.
And last but not least, to wrap things up, how do you see the role of CS evolving in companies like Cogniss, where customers are both creators and users?
Yeah, I mean, this is one that really excites me. I think what's on the horizon and what's coming, and I'd be amiss if I didn't mention AI in this sort of answer here, but it can really carry the weight of a lot of the mundane or the repetitive tasks that we all do, like preparing for QBRs, under like distilling large amounts of sort of customer data, et cetera, et cetera. And it really starts to free up the CSM or CS leader to take on much more of a strategic role where AI can't necessarily fill in those gaps. And when you're talking about a company like Cogniss, where customers are creators and users, I think it really empowers or creates space for that CSM to really embed themselves in that creation process. They can become much more of a trusted advisor, a consultant in that space, helping customers build solutions, build apps that have real impact and stay close to those as well. They're not spread as thin kind of with these monotonous sort of tasks, but can spend more time helping that customer create sort of the bigger impact, acting as that consult, acting as that sort of strategic advisor. And I think really that's a place that a CSM can become really invaluable to that business there. So yeah, that's what I see.
Mm, This was a great conversation, and you managed to kudos to you and the whole team because you managed to connect the strategy, the no code, the customer success into one solid approach. Congratulations. Thanks again for joining and for sharing your story with us. And to everyone listening, thanks for tuning in. Until next time, stay curious, keep learning and mastering customer success.
Thanks so much. I appreciate it.